You're at your old trusty boat. You call mighty sparrow. I'm in the city of Mardi Gras.
Welcome to the Sailing into Oblivion podcast, where we sit down with everyday people who do extraordinary things. I'm your host, Jerome Rand. Hey everybody, so today I get to sit down again with my cousin Jerome, the younger, handsomer version of myself, I suppose. Much more learned in the ways of wine, and we talk a little bit about wine, but we pretty much go off into the universe as far as we possibly can, and sort of spitball around the place. So it's kind of an enjoyable what we dubbed as sort of junk food conversation, which can be a lot of fun as long as you don't eat it all the time. Other than that, the Patreon family continues to grow, and I cannot stress enough how awesome that is and how much I really, really, really appreciate all the support and the emails that I'm getting. Just been fantastic. Absolutely couldn't be happier. So as I always say, if you want to support the podcast, head over to Patreon and the link will be in the description. And if you just want to reach out to the show, throw me a few questions or anything like that, just head over to sailingintooblivion.com and you can contact the show right from the website. Without further ado, here comes Jerome. Well, as in an offer for that?
Yep, just spam texts.
I don't understand how they get your number.
I think it's because now when you're like buying things through like Square, online, I think you have to put in your number for Shopify
And then it just
stuff.
gets sold to the
Sent
highest
out.
bidder.
Yeah.
Because, I will get text messages, everything from fake bank notices, which somehow they figure out which bank I use, to, I don't know, just all sorts of garbage and a lot of political stuff too.
I don't get any political things
Really?
somehow. Yeah, not really. Sometimes closer to November.
Yeah,
I might.
yeah.
And I don't know if it's like my number is still a 317 area code, and Indiana is a pretty red state.
Oh,
so
right.
all the left leaning groups are like, just don't waste your time on any 317 numbers.
Oh, that's interesting. I never thought about it that way. Because, I don't know if Michigan is actually a swing state or not. I don't think it's a swing state, but it's, I don't know.
It's
teeters.
purple. It's got
purple.
these pockets
Yeah.
of red and blue.
Well, I think when you look at it as you look at most of the country with the red and blue map, in Michigan especially, it's all blue around Detroit where the vast majority of our population is, and then it's red almost everywhere else.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's always pretty crazy to look at that type of information and that actual map, because if it was on land mass, you'd be like, well, geez, it's all red.
Yeah.
Except for these little pockets of blue, but those pockets of blue
Population
are
centers.
all the populations. Yeah, I don't know. It's always interesting. But what's that old saying, like, about statistics and lies or something like that?
I don't know.
I don't know. Gosh, I wish I could remember it. But basically, you can make statistics tell you what you want.
Yeah.
I guess. I mean, numbers. I'm not a numbers guy. Hey, I'm a sailor. But now, on that topic, though, really, so you've been up here in Michigan for 5 days.
Yes.
Of thorough, peaceful relaxation. Oh, the chipmunks are back.
I heard them.
Bring the dog up here. Chipmunks are gone. They sense it, and now the chipmunks are all cruising around. Sorry. So 5 days up here,
Yep.
and in the serene wilderness area of northern Michigan.
Yep.
And now it's back to the big city.
Yep. Yeah, we
Back to Babylon.
oh my gosh. Yeah. We land around like 7:30, 7:45ish probably. We'll be back in our apartment by 9.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave.
Yeah, right. Well, it's understandable. I mean, the pace of life here compared to the pace of life, even you guys are in Brooklyn, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
And Brooklyn is that on Manhattan?
No.
it's
So
not.
it's
Manhattan's the island.
yeah, but we're only realistically like a 15-minute subway ride away.
Oh,
like
okay.
door to door, I can get to Canal Street, like right in Chinatown in like 15 minutes.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And you like New York?
There are parts of New York that I like.
Yeah.
And I love where we're living now. We might have talked about this on one of the previous episodes that we've done, but where we are feels very residential.
Yeah.
You know, it's not like when we were in Chicago, we were on the ground floor of a house that had 2 apartments, and the second apartment was upstairs. But it had like all these like single family homes
Yeah.
side by side, so like individual structures. In Brooklyn, it's just a solid wall of brownstones,
Yeah.
and they're only 3 stories tall.
Is it like that's essentially shoot like the intro or like the Huxtable's house,
Probably.
Cosby Show,
Yeah.
same sort of thing where
Yeah.
it's all essentially one building, but they're all separate
Exactly.
homes.
And they're really old. Like they have character and kind of molding, all that. And some of them are single family where you just have like 3 floors and a garden level kind of floor. So like one family can live there. It's just like it's thin, but it's tall.
Yeah, yeah.
What I don't know who did it, but in our building, it's just again like 3 apartments, one on top of the other. The ground floor has a basement. They have access to the backyard patio area.
Uh-huh.
But they've just split one house into 3 apartments.
Oh, okay,
And so we just have the middle one.
right, right. Oh, you guys are sandwiched.
Mhm.
But you said that's actually kind of nice because you get the leaves of the trees, not the trunks.
Yeah.
Out of your windows.
And there's obviously a little bit of traffic, but it's not right outside of our window, so we're a little bit removed from that. And like the lights that come with a lot of the traffic too. So
Yeah.
and we get a little bit of natural light. It's of all the places, 'cause I used to live in Manhattan. Francesca used to live in Manhattan. I lived in Williamsburg back in 2009 when I first moved to New York City and immediately left.
Yeah, where exactly is Williamsburg? Because I've heard that before.
It's a little bit further north than where we are.
Oh, okay, okay.
Yeah, and there's a subway line called the L that directly connects. And I don't know enough about the history of Williamsburg, but it became very trendy in like 2005, 2010. I think I'm not a New York City historian, but
Would that be considered like suburbs?
no,
No.
the suburbs of New York would probably be like areas of New Jersey, like Hoboken and Jersey City, and those might even be not
New
really.
Rochelle?
Yeah, and like Yonkers.
I've
and,
only seen
and up
that
there.
in movies.
Yeah,
I'm just
exactly.
trying to name drop.
Yeah, no, nailed it. I think that's where it's like kind of where you can commute into the city from like a more residential neighborhood or smaller town.
Right, right.
Yeah, New York's funny because there's definitely this like metropolitan urban center, and then there's like some sprawl outwards, and then you get up into Western Connecticut and the Westchester and Dutchess counties in New York, and then these quaint little towns.
Yeah, yeah. I've seen some of those, like kind of cruising up and down the East Coast as much as I had in the past, but I've never been out to Long Island.
Long Island, I haven't really been either. I know a lot of like restaurants and wineries towards the end with the Hamptons, and you know there's a level of affluence that you get
Yeah.
out there. The wine that's coming out of Long Island is really exciting too. It's really good, and it's getting better every year, which is really great.
Well, they have vineyards out there?
Lots of them, yeah, and they're becoming popular to visit. You'll be able to find them more and more across the country, and they're with like global warming and climate change. You're actually getting longer growing seasons where you're able to really, you know, make really good wine that's not just cold weather wine that actually has like a lot of depth and substance. It's
Oh,
great.
Right.
And like the longer that the vineyard, like the older the vines are, then the more kind of complex fun wines you can make as well. So it's a really exciting area for wine out in Long Island.
Have they been doing that for a long time?
Yeah, again, I don't remember a lot of the history of New York State wine. I know that up in the Finger Lakes it's much older because they have a lot of immigrants that came from like Germany and Europe that wanted to go back and not go back to Europe, but go back to like the winemaking roots that their family might have had over there.
Oh,
and the
okay.
climate is similar enough and the geology is similar enough for them to get back to making things like Riesling, which is super popular in Germany, and you know all of those kind of classic grapes. It's kind of all about finding that right balance between what the soil's like, what the weather's like, and then where the people that are making the wine actually came from, what their inspiration
Yeah,
is.
right. When their sort of knowledge base too, you know, that family history that's going down and the information being passed
Yeah.
on from one generation to the next.
Yeah. And Europe has been making wine for obviously so much longer than the States, you know, and their history is so deep, and we're relatively young in it. And we're getting better and better. Napa and Sonoma in California has been since like the 70s just getting bigger and bigger. And then places like Oregon have really grown. places farther south in California, like Santa Barbara, have become much more popular just in their own right, and they've become areas that are known for a particular kind of wine.
Well, and that's the environment that they're trying to grow that stuff in, right? And isn't that, I mean, I know, like, it's like Chardonnay is huge there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that environment of sort of, what is it? It's like dry soil, but you've got constant like mist and moisture coming in from the Pacific.
From the closer that you are to Sonoma Coast, you definitely have more a cooling breeze and moisture and things coming into the vineyards. And then the farther inland that you go, the more protected that you are.
Oh,
and
okay,
so but you're right. You're constantly trying to figure out what vines go best with certain soil types, like clay versus mud versus sand versus rocks and gravel.
Yeah.
And then the way that they respond better to like sunlight or the difference in temperature between day and night and things like that. And in California, the history kind of was after the 70s, Cabernet, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Sauvignon Blanc, and they kind of took their cues from France. And for the last 10, 15 years or so, there's been a little bit more of a Wild West feeling, I think, where they're really starting to experiment more with bringing
coming into their own.
Yeah, and finding fun grapes and vines that haven't had a very big commercial presence in the States, but still would grow really well in these areas. Like interesting white wine grapes from Italy, like Tokai Friulano and Ribolla Gialla that you've probably never seen on a label before. It doesn't make any
Didn't even
sense.
really understand what you just said, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, does the sort of the environment in Italy where they grow a lot of the stuff mimic, or is it very similar to that of like some parts of California?
I think some parts, yeah. The way that I personally, just as my general practice, is that I really want wine that does have a sense of place. So even if they are trying to mimic or emulate or be inspired by these like classic wine regions in Italy and France and Spain, there's such an abundance of like California sunshine that I don't want it to give up that. I want it to be a product of where it comes from. But also for me personally, I like wine that's a little more restrained in alcohol. It's a little bit lighter on the new oak use that has a lot of complexity to it. But I don't want to feel like they're trying to just make French wine in California. And I think a lot of people, a lot of good winemakers and wine producers are thinking that same way, which is really great. It's how to embrace like where we are and this area, but
cut your own path.
Kind of, yeah, a little bit.
Well, and I definitely agree with you. I mean, that's one of the pure joys of when you guys visit, is that there's sort of this wine experience that goes into every meal, and it's not just like, well, this is this type of wine. It's like, this is the region. And I think I've gotten that a whole lot more this time, where yeah, you feel like, oh, we might as well be in the hills of Italy, or we'd be in Champagne, and it's kind of, I don't know, it is kind of cool to sort of take it just beyond its physical form, but also into what it's actually representing and where it's representing. You know, it's bringing its little trademark, its fingerprint, if you will, of where it was born and grown and made, and then boom.
I think that's exactly it. Yeah. You can get really specific into the vineyard, like the actual specific like plot of land within this smaller region, within this bigger region, within this country.
Yeah.
And the more specific that you get, like there's only a limited amount of wine and grapes that are being grown in that little tiny vineyard. So, with supply and demand, those bottles are super expensive.
Yeah.
Versus the ones that are just like Sonoma Coast Pinot Noir, which is still delicious, but you're getting it from this much bigger plot.
Right. Right.
So you can really get specific and find like individual vineyards and then smaller regions and then larger areas. The specificity sometimes will correlate with what's the right word? Obviously price, but also the care that sometimes these winemakers are putting into it. Like they'll be much more thoughtful about which vineyards, once they start going through the fermentation process, which ones see like the brand new oak barrels that they bought for this season, and which ones
Yeah.
kind of left over get like maybe the larger oak, or they get aged in concrete. Kind of, they start having to make
Who
these
are we going to
decisions.
spoil this
A little
year?
bit, kind of, yeah. And what, each vineyard might have a different exposure to the sun, or it might be cooler over there than it is over here. So
Well, and it could have been like an exceptionally rainy summer
exactly,
or something like
exactly,
that.
or like a longer growing period where the grapes are like phenolically ripe, but they're not as sugar heavy yet because it was like cloudy or rainy or something. So they might be like smaller berries, and so let's find the sites that had a lot more sun exposure and make sure that we really get the most out of that.
Yeah.
And then maybe use the rest. We still have to make wine because we have to pay for all this stuff, but we'll kind of like declassify it from one specific prominent vineyard to, we'll just make we'll name it something else, and we'll be able to, and it'll still be delicious. The fun thing about when you're finding producers that you like with wine, and I think this goes with everything, the ones that are really killing it at the high end generally don't let their quality standards lapse on the low end.
Yeah.
So even their like entry level or lower priced wines by the bottle are still going to be great.
Right.
It just kind of depends on what you want, and then you can kind of level up or just keep their base, and it'll still be good.
Yeah, I mean, if a place is putting out some just quality stuff, it's not like it wouldn't be a good thing for them to be like, wow, let's just make a little
Exactly.
box wine over here and just
Exactly.
there. Yeah.
What do you usually drink on the boat though? Because I don't think that you have a lot of wine.
No, but I will tell you, I took on the last big attempt, I took about 10 or 12 boxes of wine.
Really?
Yeah.
I didn't realize that.
Now, I thought in my head, I was like, okay, I'll have these big bags of wine because when we go camping up north, we're canoeing. You take the wine bag right out of the box and you're throwing it around. Granted, we typically peel through them in 3 to 4 days. But, I mean, literally, they're getting chucked around. They're hitting the ground, all this sort of stuff. So I sort of thought, well, I'm safe here. These things are going to be totally fine. Not so.
Really?
I kept them in the box, which probably was mistake number one, I guess. I don't really know. And I had them stacked and really secured in the boat. And one after another, they started leaking.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And it produced an amount of mold
Oh, no.
on the boat that I've never seen.
Wow.
I mean, explosive.
Wow.
Explosive mold. And I think one of the things partly that's responsible for that was the cardboard because, I didn't know that it was leaking until it was way too late. You start to smell it, but by that point, the back edges of these boxes were all saturated and just completely exploded with mold.
Wow.
Which then spread like wildfire around the boat.
Yeah.
On all the wood and everything like that.
Oh my gosh.
It was really odd because, I like one would break and then I would take it out and I would either try and drink as much of it as I could because I didn't want to waste it.
Yeah.
But I'd have to move it. And finally I got rid of all the cardboard and then stashed them all in the bottom of the fridge because, they kind of move. They have, I guess, essentially it's a form of what's called free surface effect. So on ships and like you can consider a big lobster boat. And when they're out there, say they have a big like 400-gallon fuel tank. Now, usually what they'll do is they'll section it off into like 3 or 4 sections, and that way you're not like when the fuel is half gone, you'd have 2 empty holds, but then the other 2 are full. Free surface effect. The problem with it is if it was all one tank and it's half full, every time the boat tilts to one side, all the fuel goes to that side and continues the tilt.
Yeah.
And in really bad conditions, that can happen. And what they'll do sometimes is they'll flood open tanks with salt water if the weather gets really, really bad. But so essentially these, even though if you have like 6 or 7 of these 5-liter bags of wine, I don't need them rolling around all over the boat.
Yeah.
So they're secured in there. But boy, they kept leaking and leaking and leaking. And I remember one night thinking that I had sort of done a pretty good job, and an LED headlamp, I go down below and I sort of shine it forward and I look just on the side of the wall and it's like a fuzz. And I couldn't see it during the day, but with that LED light, that fluorescent-ish thing illuminated, and I started peering around, and I mean, it was like my entire boat was covered in
What
mold.
do you do? Is it like a homemade vinegar water
Yeah,
spray?
I did that, and then I also had some Clorox and bleach.
Okay.
And the problem is both of those, you're sitting down there in a very unventilated space. You've only got like one little thing open because you can't have everything open unless it's really calm out there.
Mhm.
And I remember at one point hitting it with some bleach, trying to just get everywhere, and you have to water it down. I've heard rumors that if you use straight bleach on it, it's sometimes the mold will actually be able to, I don't know, somehow protect itself from it and just like hibernate until it is all gone, and then they come back to life. I'm not sure. It just seemed to keep coming back and back and back, and eventually when I got back on the dock after 80 days or whatever,
Mhm.
I got an ozone machine,
Yeah.
and that wiped it out. And I actually have, when I left this time to come up here, I left it running in the boat for like 3 days, and then right before I get back, and because it seems like ozone's the only thing that really can penetrate into every surface. Because in a boat, you've got underneath the floor, which you can't access every little bit.
Right.
And if you miss one little grove of mold, it's just instantly spreading again, those
Yep.
spores and all that sort of stuff. I don't know. It's fungus and mold is absolutely, it's terrifying, it's amazing, and it's incredible all in one. I don't know. Do they ever make any mushroom wine?
Well, I mean, maybe not mushroom, not mushroom wine that I would call it, but if you look at some of the dessert wine, those are made as mold starts to develop on the grapes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's called Noble Rot.
Oh, please tell me about this.
So, I mean, some of the most expensive wine in the world is made this way.
Really?
Yeah, so in Bordeaux, there's this dessert wine called Sauterne, and it's made when the grapes kind of start rotting, and these two rivers combine, and there's a lot of humidity in the air, and like kind of a little bit, if I recall correctly, because it's been a minute since I've studied all this stuff.
That's all right.
But eventually, this noble rot will start developing on the grapes, and it'll actually kind of start getting them all moldy, and it'll pierce the skin, so you have a lot less yield. And eventually, when you get to that final wine, you will kind of, one of the telltale signs of one of the traits of Sauterne is this kind of sweet mushroomy
Really?
aroma to it. Yeah.
And when a mold is a fungus, right? So in reality, I mean, when the fermentation process is going on with all wine, is mold playing a part in it, or no? Just the type you're talking about?
Mold will only, and again, it's been a minute since I've studied this.
Yeah.
So the mold is Botrytis cinerea, or I don't know if that's how you pronounce it. Maybe it's cinerea, but it's Botrytis.
Yeah.
And then once fermentation starts, I'm pretty sure that the yeast will kill anything else in there, or the alcohol will.
Oh, right.
So
okay.
so I mean, sometimes it's almost like there's a lot of fires out in the West where they're making wine, and so and it's becoming more of an annual regular thing. And so a lot of people are like, oh, it's gonna be like a smoky vintage or something like that. But generally, the way that it's been explained to me is that the yeast and the fermentation process pretty much knock all of those
All
other
that out.
things out of. Yeah.
Okay. Gotcha.
But the yield is so much less just because as the mold kind of starts attacking these grapes and it punctures the skin.
It's eating it.
Yeah, and the juice is getting evaporated. So you don't have these like big plump grapes anymore. You have these like shriveled up moldy grapes.
Yeah.
And that's what you're making the Sauterne out of.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. And you said that's a dessert wine?
Yeah, because it gets pretty sugary.
Does it have a higher alcohol content?
Lower, actually.
Oh, lower,
Yeah.
really? I see how it's a dessert wine then. So, because isn't dessert essentially made as like a little pick-me-up? You
Probably.
just eat this big
Just
meal
want, like, something
here,
sweet, too.
take some sugar,
Yeah.
and get on with your
Yeah,
night
same way as
sort of.
coffee. Like, I'm
Yeah, I'm
I'm
about to
going
nod
down.
off.
Yeah.
Right. I need to at least be able to walk home.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's been, I don't know why, but like mushrooms and everything have sort of been on my mind lately. And I actually, before we were up here, I was watching these, I don't know who does it, but on YouTube, it's called After School. And it's, I don't know, they take clips from, monologues and conversations and things like that. and there's an artist that's like drawing out what they're talking about. So it's interactive, both just listening to it, but also watching on the screen. And they talk about the stoned ape theory. And then the one I was watching today was about panspermia, essentially, that, life could be seeded from other planets. Life didn't start here. It came here on a rock, and they're talking about how lichen, some forms of lichen, they've tested they can, live in space for 18 months, just in outer space on a rock sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And they think, well, geez, there's no reason something like this couldn't have been on a planet that got hit by something and then blown out. And then, a million years later, it lands on our little rock.
Yep.
And then goes. But the interesting part, and it's pretty far-fetched for sure, but it's essentially saying that mushrooms are actually using us as a way to ensure that they get transported more and more interplanetary. So,
really? Like they're the main character.
The main thing.
Yeah. We're a little side character.
Exactly, because they have, there's lots of examples in nature where fungus will take over like insects and control the insect into doing exactly what it wants. And there's creepy pictures of like an ant-looking thing that's got two mushrooms
like a zombie
growing out of it, and you're like, oh, you just think about like, if I had a mushroom growing out of my arm, I'd probably pick that thing off of there pretty quick. But in any event, the idea is that part of this whole thing is where it gets into the psychedelic mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, have you ever heard of the stoned ape theory?
No.
Okay, well,
I had an idea of what you said it was when you first mentioned it, but I don't actually know. To me, it sounds like when a bear finds like fermenting grapes, or fermenting fruit, and he eats it and he gets like a little hammered. But I don't know if that's actually what you're referring to.
Essentially, it kind of is. So there's basically, again, these are all just theories, but they're just so interesting. But basically, these certain types of psychedelic mushrooms have psilocybin or whatever, and I'm no expert by any means.
Mm-hmm.
But they develop, 20 million years ago or whatever in Africa on the plains, and essentially the theory is that, our ancestors, when they're very, very basic, just animals, start all of a sudden eating these things. And when you eat them, your neurons are going bananas and your brain is going crazy. And all of a sudden, you feel good. And even if it's just an animal at that point, like a monkey or whatever, it's sort of like, well, there's more of that stuff, and they go and get more. I mean, if you ate something and it made you feel good, you would go and eat more of it, and more and more. And then you go 100 years, and then you go 1,000 years, and then you go 1,000,000 years. And if the theory is true that taking some of these sort of psychotropic mushrooms kind of can change the makeup of your brain and make more neurons and more connections and all sort of stuff, and open your mind up, it'd be almost like it's almost like as if they were the key to snapping out of running completely on instinct. Mm-hmm. Like that's how I've sort of always thought. The difference between animals and people is that animals run on instinct. They've got to eat, they've got to reproduce, and they've got to stay alive.
Right.
And that's just instinct, and it just goes and goes and goes. But then you have, and I don't think people are alone. I think, dolphins and whales, and I think there's some other animals out there that for sure have breached that line and sort of communicate, and they actually probably have thoughts and whatever. But yeah, so essentially after enough time goes by, that may be what basically kicked our evolutionary branch way off from the norm,
really,
and just kept us going and going and going. And this, it's definitely an idea, because it's so hard to think of like why are we different than all the rest? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And if you've ever taken any of that stuff, I think it's a little more relatable, because you're sort of like, yeah, whoa, like it was like a doorway into another dimension,
Right.
And I know they say that about other stuff, and I'm not well versed in many of these drugs or anything like that,
Mhm.
but I don't know. It's just an interesting theory that that fungus could be sort of the thing that's driving. But I guess to sort of transition those two or bridge that gap. So you got the stoned ape theory.
Mhm.
And then in this sort of transpermia sort of thing of where the fungus is actually just controlling us, one of the things that they talk about is, maybe the mushrooms basically knew. They were like, okay, these are our best chance to get us off onto the next planet. And so let's start producing these chemicals that when they eat it, it expands their minds even more, makes them smarter, makes them wonder, all this sort of stuff. And one of the pretty far-fetched correlations that they make is, back in the days of, the Greek philosophers and all that sort of stuff, when they were making beer, I guess it had some sort of psychotropic drug in it, and it had to have been, you had to water it way down, not because of the alcohol, because I think at that point it was only pretty much beer and some sort of wine, but because its effects were so powerful. And so you get this crazy birth of knowledge in all it's not the Renaissance, but the classical era, of all the philosophers and all that sort of stuff. And then nothing for a while, but then the Renaissance, they sort of theorized that, maybe they sort of tapped back into that elixir, and then all of a sudden you get this explosion of new ideas and all this stuff, even with all the suppression from, the church and all the stuff that was going on back in like the 1500s, if that's the time frame. Again, no expert. But then, right now you're getting a bit of a surge and all that sort of stuff. Or not right now yet, but in the 1960s, when the big psychedelic sort of movement was going on, and that's when our sort of it seemed like everybody was looking towards the stars. Everybody's like, let's launch some rockets.
Every once in a while you see that Reddit post of like the early 1900s was like, we just learned how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
Like the Wright brothers and the like paper and sticks. It looks so rudimentary. And then you fast forward 100 years and it's satellites, rockets, and a space station.
Well, and some would say, all of a sudden the human race got a big acid trip, and now we're building rockets and we're shooting off to the nearest rock.
Yeah.
And then, Nixon comes in and the war on drugs, and boom, 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 it's all illegal, and psychedelics take a huge drop. And then you get to present day, and there's places, Oregon, California, Michigan, are legalizing the use of, or working towards legalizing the use of, like magic mushrooms, things like that.
It's being recognized more as like treatments.
Exactly. And now that it's getting a little bit more in the mainstream, we're trying to go out and colonize Mars again. And here's the thing, if you think about it that way with an open brain, it's sort of like,
this was the mushrooms plan the whole time.
The mushrooms plan is coming true. We are being completely controlled by this fungi that wants to be able to ride a rocket to the next to the next planet. I don't know. I watched that this morning and I thought that was so interesting.
First, we have to teach the humans how to invent a wheel.
Yep.
Then we got
to break them out,
domesticate horses, do some farming.
It's going to take a couple billion years, but hey, we got time. We're just fungus.
Yep. And then really quickly, like Industrial Revolution, Age of Enlightenment, cars, space.
Yeah.
Boom.
I don't know. It's so fun to just think of that stuff. I think, I always seem to go back to, when I was a teenager and we'd have these long conversations about stuff like that. It seems like somewhere along the line, you hit a certain age and those sort of fade away.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I don't know, lately I've felt like they're sort of coming back. Maybe it's because of this podcast. I don't know, but it's I don't know. Sometimes it's fun to ponder things. And I think Sven and I were talking, and we had said another quote that I don't know, but it's like, stupid people talk about other people, smart people talk about politics or something. and then geniuses talk about ideas.
Something like that. Yeah.
There's that echelon of like, how are you going to spend your conversating time?
Yeah.
On something kind of gossipy or whatever, or is it going to be a worthwhile like, let's solve a problem,
Yeah.
let's investigate. And there's something to be said for just sitting there and I guess talking like movies or whatever, it's I would call that sort of the junk food of conversation, which is sometimes really good.
Yeah.
Tastes great. Love doing it. It's fun, and it can't always be, a freaking 5-course meal, salads, and all the good stuff all the time.
Yeah.
Right?
Sometimes you just need popcorn.
Sometimes you just need a little popcorn.
Salt and butter.
Yeah, exactly. But I don't know, that whole theory and stuff, when I see those, it's nice to kind of think. It made me think so much that I got up and I just started walking around, the woods around here, and I'm just looking at everything like a little suspect. And I saw some mushrooms and I kind of looked at them and I was like, I mean, it didn't change anything in my brain really, but I don't know. It is, wouldn't that be crazy if some point of time way down the line, like we sort of figured it all out.
We find the mother spore, and she was thinking about it the whole time.
Yeah, and it basically, it's like, holy cow, like we found fungus planet, and they can talk to us, and oh my gosh, this is what they've been doing.
Yeah,
this is crazy. I don't know.
It's like good sci-fi. Like maybe it's like War of the Worlds and The Expanse and things like that. That like I think that the for me, there's two real ways that science fiction like that can go, and one really is like the movie The Sixth Sense.
Yeah,
where there's this like really excellent mystery, and it turns out that it does have this like kind of mystical magic quality where the kid really does see dead people, and the surprise is like, no, that it actually exists.
Was that M. Night Shyamalan?
Yeah.
It was.
Yeah.
I'm literally sitting here, and I was about to say, before you even said that, I was like, it's kind of like, if we discovered this planet, it'd be like the end of an M. Night Shyamalan movie.
Or like Signs too. Like Signs, like, no, the aliens are real.
Yeah,
There's lots of other messages and things.
Our
especially
brains
in
are
Signs.
connected right now.
I think so.
The two Jeromes.
This wavelength.
Yeah, right.
But then there's and those are like, no, the magic actually exists. Like there are aliens. This kid is special. Like it's
yeah.
And then there's the other way. I think his other movie, The Village, where they were actually, I haven't seen that movie in a very long time.
You've seen it though.
But like when it came out, it was
Holy
like Mark Wahlberg.
smokes.
But wasn't the ending the big reveal was like it's a fake
Spoiler
town?
alert.
Yeah, thank you.
Jeez, barely made that in.
You did. But wasn't that, you could just mute it and post.
And I think, isn't there like a rule of, once a movie gets to a certain age?
Yeah,
but it is always good to say, spoiler alert. But anyway, Village.
But the ending goes the other direction. It's like super mundane. There wasn't any magic. It was all kind of like fake and arbitrary and set up.
Right.
And so those are kind of the two different ways that those kinds of movies can go, and they're really exciting. I think that the big spore planet, I don't know if that would be like the cathartic payoff, or if it would be at the end of the Matrix trilogy with the big machine there.
Yeah, right. It would be kind of similar to that. I wonder if, you take the Matrix, switch the machines out with mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
And that's where we're living right now.
Somebody tell James Cameron he could rip that one off too.
Yeah. Like, stop doing
Sorry,
Avatar.
James, love your work, bud.
Yeah, after Avatar, he should do this, and then he should retire. This should be his...
And you wouldn't even have to change that much in the title. Instead of the Matrix, the mushroom.
Well, I think that's where movies and stories can kind of align themselves with like philosophy and science fiction ideas, right? It's like
absolutely.
You're telling sometimes like, talking about Avengers movies all day is like, serotonin, popcorn discussions.
It's great, and it's mind-blowing, and it's entertaining and all that.
Yeah.
But it's not going to... I don't know. I suppose even that, it sort of makes me think a little bit about, I don't know, like people coming together as a whole to solve problems.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not like when I watch, I don't know, Shawshank Redemption or just something that has a whole lot more meat to it.
Yeah.
rather than.
But it's a very localized
visual.
human story. Like
Yeah.
Shawshank, like Andy Dufresne's story has nothing to do with anybody else on the planet. It's
Yeah,
just
exactly.
Andy in red.
Well, do you know that I saw precisely 90% of that movie like a handful of times before I ever saw the whole thing.
Really?
Yeah, and I was in college, and they were watching it. We were at a buddy's house, and I was like, "Oh yeah, I've seen some of this." And the guy's like, "What do you mean some of it?" And I was like, "I've never seen the end of this."
It was on like
so
TNT
long."
all the time. Like, you just turn it on and pick it
And
up where he
he-
left off. And
Dude, he looked at me like, "You're gonna sit here and watch this,"
Yeah.
and I was like, "Oh, yeah, all right, whatever." And jaw agape.
right.
I've never I can't believe that I watched so much of that and never saw how it ended and how much of a crazy twist that is. And I was just like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I was blown away.
Shawshank Redemption's incredible. I love that movie.
There really is some absolutely great stuff. And like I said, I mean, when your brother Pat, does he go by Pat or Patrick?
I think by either.
Either
I think
one?
most people call him Pat.
Okay. Yeah, and he had brought up Snowpiercer and how he really enjoyed it, and I think it was sort of a really thinking movie for him because it's showing so much. And I don't know, I must not have been in the right mood when I saw it because I was just like, this is like garbage sci-fi train. What?
Yeah,
Da-da-da.
with like
But-
Captain America and like Soylent
it
Green
didn't
and
but after he had talked about it so much, I ended up going back and watching it with a little more analytical mind.
yeah,
And then I was like, wow, okay, so this is about society and classes and having a stable, world essentially, even though, I mean, even just a freight train tunneling through, around the planet. We're on a rock flinging through the universe.
Yeah, right.
It's
What's the difference?
Same thing. Yeah. So I don't know. There's a lot of, it can be amazing the way stories get put together like that and in that format. I mean, I kind of get more of that when I read a book than I do when I watch a movie, but it seems like, I guess that's really just the fast paced as opposed to the slow burn of a book.
Yeah.
Well,
sometimes there are allegories and stories that really do reflect like the writer's fears or concerns, like Animal Farm.
Yeah.
Or like Mouse, the comic, the I guess graphic novel would be the more appropriate way, but Mouse, Maus.
I've
you read
never
that?
heard. No.
It's an amazing story. It's written in a comic book graphic novel format, and they're basically anthropomorphized
Anthropomorphized.
mice that is basically it's like a Jewish family that I think lives in Brooklyn in New York, and they are telling their kids the story of the Holocaust.
Oh,
It's incredible.
wow. Okay.
It is. I read it as a kid in elementary school.
Yeah,
when we were
yeah.
studying like World War II,
Huh.
and it's a really incredible
Right.
like just work.
Yeah. Well, and books, it's obviously, as opposed to a movie's packing it all into 120 minutes or whatever. And a book, you can take a lifetime to read it if you want.
Yeah.
And so with that sort of slow burn, you have such a huge amount of emotions and thoughts and queries, questions, all this sort of stuff going on in your head while you're sort of doing it. But I don't know, a movie, I don't even know what I'm trying to say. I enjoy them both, but I guess if I'm really looking to stimulate the brain, it's definitely reading a story rather than watching one.
I think movies really have to have that element of commercial success because they're so expensive to produce and distribute that it actually has to make money. So maybe some of the more meaningful elements do get a little watered down for a broader appeal.
I never thought about it that way, kid, because I mean, a book, these days you can write a book and publish it on Amazon, cost you $0.
Yeah.
And it's out there.
Yeah.
Your story is out there. You can't do that with a movie.
Can't.
Well, I mean,
You could do it like you and me could do it right now with like this
yeah.
little camera and
Throw
your
it up
editing
on
software.
YouTube,
Yeah,
done.
like you could still do it.
10 million views.
Easy.
Oh, that whole views game, man. This is like one of the first times in my life. Well, I shouldn't say that. When Tommy got me to upload some of that stuff on TikTok, years ago. That was the first time I'd ever experienced, watching number counts of views and likes and things like that. And again, in my mind, it just equated towards this will help with the book.
Yeah.
And so that was sort of the impetus for that. But it was the first time I sort of lived in that world.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else I'd ever done social media wise was always just so small that, it was like, oh, I'll put that up there so my friends can see it.
Right.
Yeah. And that was pretty much it. And now trying to sort of build up a little bit of a thing on YouTube again for hopefully all this stuff, the podcast and maybe getting back into presentations, things like that.
Yeah.
And
my brother, and if anyone's listening, Chris has an amazing YouTube channel called Lemon Beans.
Oh, I love Lemon Beans.
It's really focused on, I think, dramatic videos.
It's unbelievable.
They're really good. There's a narrative and a whole point of view and a perspective, but they're based on gaming.
Yeah, I mean, it's the games. If there are any gamers listening, the games he's linked in with were DayZ,
Mm-hmm. Tarkov,
and then
Star
Citizen. Yeah,
and he might be starting to do some reviews of old games too.
Yeah.
I think they're really well done. They're put together in a way that is familiar but also unique.
Well, and they are essentially almost like what we were talking about before, like small movies, because the way he's able to, and he really is an artist when it comes to editing these things together, and he's recording what's on his screen, and you feel emotion, like when he links up with somebody else and they're running around trying to, stay away from zombies or whatever.
Yeah.
I'm sitting in there like, oh no, don't do that. Oh man, he shot you, and like all this stuff, and you kind of feel it's like he's built this character up, and watching them, especially when they're like 30 minutes long.
Yep, they're fun.
It's amazing because you just get straight into it. And the way, I mean, obviously he has immense skill when it comes to editing the things together,
Mm-hmm.
and his creativity in it is second to none. It really is great.
I like how he does the narration and then he'll flip it over to like his in-game recording where you hear like his voice in the game, which is very different from the narration voice that he uses sometimes.
Exactly,
so they're kind of like this omniscient narrator, like this third person or first person, and then you get into the action like in the minute where everything's being recorded. So it's not like him retelling it; it's him putting the viewer right into what he was for the first time. And so you're reacting at the same time to the same things.
Well, watching him do that and sort of his techniques really was helping sort of inspire me with some of the videos that I've been doing, where just trying to, I'm doing this narration, but I actually found a way so I can finish a piece that I've done that has different clips of sailing trips and stuff in it. I'm narrating over the whole thing, but then if I want to add in a clip that actually has its own audio, I figured out, okay, I can just take that whole thing and then split it in half and then do that. And I can see how it gets more. I mean, he said that essentially it's, if he wants to put out like a 15-minute video, it's probably 40 hours.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Oh, 40 hours.
I wonder if you'd be able to like
how you do that?
like you would splice in part of your trip that has a very visual element to it, and then you can get a green screen right in here and pause it and then walk in like a weatherman, and then kind of point things out like, so this is where you, and then you just walk back off.
Here's where the trouble started.
Right, yeah. Okay, and then you just walk off set. Okay, let's roll it, and then you have the actual live video happening.
Right.
You're like,
oh, jeez. You know what I've always wanted to do, and I maybe I will this year. Who knows? If I end up here, I might possibly do it. But so there's a lot of really cool, graphically cool weather forecasting sites like Windy, and you can, if you green screen it behind you, if you get one of those, then you can sort of play Weatherman. And I've always wanted, because I've stared at these files and these forecasts out on the boat for years now, and gone up and down the East Coast multiple times and gotten caught in all the bad weather and all the good weather and all that sort of stuff.
yeah,
But actually go and do like every couple of days, do just the East Coast passage weather. but do it in a really juiced up sort of
That could be
Weatherman
awesome.
format.
That could be
you know?
awesome.
Be like, whoa, do not leave Jersey for South Carolina.
That would
we
be
got
so
a low
cool.
pressure system coming off of Hatteras, which is gonna kick your ass.
Or even like go through like your map. Like, what if you blew up one of the nautical maps that you used, and that was like the wall behind you, and then you'd be pointing to like the route that you took.
Oh, right,
and match that with footage, and
Ah,
all
see,
that.
that's
Like,
good brainstorming.
yeah,
They're all, it's amazing the ideas that people come up with just when you sit and start blabbering on.
yeah. And
I mean,
green
it's great.
screens, when I was back at my mom's house when Chris got his, and it is literally just a sheet, just a green sheet,
Just
and
a green sheet,
he
yeah.
hung it over two things and angled the camera to have his frame in it, and then he put it on his software, and he kind of kept tinkering. He brought in that red leather like matrix chair that
it is.
Morpheus sits
That's
on.
where I've seen that
It
chair
looks
before.
like it. It looks a lot
very
like
much
it. Yeah, same color of the upholstery.
Yeah, it's that old classic sort of 60s, 70s style.
But if it only costs you like whatever it costs to get a little green screen of, I don't know how big the measurements are, but they're not that big, and you have this GoPro camera, and I don't know if there's expensive software that you need, but you got everything else that you need.
Yeah, no, true. Well, it is. Yeah, I don't know. At this point, I'm just about at my limit for how much stuff I want to be taking on at the moment. But pretty soon, a lot of some of the footage stuff that I'm doing will come to an end once I, get the last like 20 short videos out or whatever, because the trip ends.
Right.
Which is kind of nice. It's not like this never ending eternal tunnel that I'm trying to go down. It's more of like, well, there's only gonna be so many, and then that's over, and then I move on from it. Like with the long form story about the trip around the world, I'm finished part 4, and then I've got 5, 6, and maybe 7. So I have 3 more of those, and then again, you have to sort of grow the next idea straight from nothing,
right?
Which I think is kind of cool because it keeps things a little bit fresh.
Yeah.
And again, I'm so new to the actual like putting effort into creating videos for YouTube that I don't know how any of it's going to go.
Yeah.
It seems like people enjoy it, and like I said, if anything, my sort of goal would be to be able to do things like the podcast and some more videos and things like that, and actually be able to sustain myself.
Yeah.
Stop living disgustingly under the poverty line.
Well, I have 2 questions, but they're not exactly related, but I don't want to forget them. So the first one is, like, you mentioned that just watching Chris's videos kind of gave you some ideas and inspiration about like how to, is there a,
I ripped him off.
yeah, just
thanks, cuz.
total plagiarism.
Yeah.
But is there a community of like modern content creators that you're a part of that you get to like ask questions about? Like, I know
you definitely could.
Yeah.
I think that YouTube is one of those things where it's a really gray area when it comes to copyright infringement and stuff like that. As far as when it comes to like musics and putting songs in videos, they'll get you. Boom, that's cut and dry.
Right.
But if I see a video that has somebody telling the story of some sailor, and I see how they do it, and I'm like, oh, I think I could probably do that and like add my own little twist on. But there's a lot of people that will just be like, I'm going to copy that word for word, do everything I can, because there's no real laws against that.
Right.
And it's a big faux pas for sure, and it's something I think you always have to think of when you're doing it. But I mean, there's tons of different genres in YouTube, so Chris would be part of like the gaming.
Well, that's what I was going to ask. Is
Yeah.
that not just like sailing or adventuring or things like that, but the genres and the creators that are putting out maybe like creative, not necessarily best in class, but tactics on that apply to everybody. Length of videos, or like you and Francesca were talking about what time
you put.
Exactly. Like how many, like, do you drop 2 a week? Is it a Monday and Thursday? And the other question I didn't want to forget is, when you're now tracking all this data more, and obviously you can see like views in real time, but do you get a sense of, are there views on mobile or on a computer?
I'm pretty sure it tells you all that. You can see why, like, not only what they're watching on, what cities, where your traffic's coming from, the age of the people that are looking at it.
Yeah, and you might be able to pick up, like on YouTube, whether it's the YouTube app or whether it's Chrome or whether it's Safari, and then if it's an iPhone or a Galaxy or there's other operating systems, and
their analytics are crazy.
But then you can optimize, because if you know everyone's just watching on your phone, you don't have to worry about this big,
crazy
landscape.
production.
Exactly. If it's only going to be just on your little.
Well, and with
optimize it for night viewing because everyone's on their phone, they can't sleep, and they're.
Well, and that sort of thing is, with the short videos, YouTube's answer to TikTok was, the only good thing about the fact that I had no idea that when you're filming with an iPhone, you really should be doing it landscape. So I did all my filming vertical on that first trip. But luckily, they all of a sudden came a platform for that sort of style,
because they realize that that's how people take videos. They don't because it's two hands,
exactly.
This is one, it fits your face better,
it's perfect. But I do remember when I got back, I was like, oh man, because when I wanted to upload a few of the things, it was like two huge black voids on either side of this time thing,
or it's like reflected,
I guess a part of me thought when I first started doing it, I was like, oh, there's got to be a way to like modify this and like stretch it out or whatever.
No, but then you lose because then it's just like your face.
Yeah,
like your
exactly.
You lose everything up or down. Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, like anything, it's just sort of. I have the time to do it after work and before work, and I don't know. It's fun.
Well, I know that Francesca has Instagram or has TikTok. I don't have TikTok, but I still have the Instagram app. You don't have the Instagram app anymore. But like I said the other day, there was one random clip of some dude like coiling a line in a cabin, and it's like what it's like to live on a boat. And I'm like, if this guy can do this, Jerome's footage has to be a mountain compared to this guy's molehill. And all he did was add some text and like put it in a loop of him coiling something, or like wrapping him. And I've been looking for it to show up again naturally on the little Instagram feed. And I want to send it to you just so you can have an idea of how low effort.
It's crazy.
Really
like
big.
I say, the algorithms are an enigma. I was watching, I think it was on a Lex Friedman podcast, and they were talking about, the algorithms and how they're dealing with trying to, enforce the community guidelines. And the guy was just like, we don't even like the cat's out of the bag. There's so much content now that we can't control all of it because it's too big. Only the algorithm can. We don't even know how it's doing. Like it's like turning into this almost like the sci-fi AI monster that it's like, oh, people are going to start praying to the AI YouTube algorithm.
Well, they're getting so much data every second, like how many taps and what
insane.
Well, and they've done it all themselves. It's so easy because they put a GPS thing right in the phones to know like you said, like exactly where they are, what device, what operating system, what app, and then also the hashtags that are like you can track how many what hashtags doing what and they're getting data. They're getting millions of points of data every second,
probably
every little tap, and then every swipe, and then every like, and then every comment, and then all that engagement, and it's bananas.
It really is. And people wonder why we're in an energy crisis, and it's like, well, it takes power to run you think, look at this. We get 3 phones on here and a computer. Well, although this stuff on my side of the table is powered by that solar panel out there.
That's true.
Which took a lot of coal to produce. Who knows? Yeah. I don't want to get into that debate. We're getting close to an hour, and I figure we'll save that for next time.
I found a picture while we were chatting. So that's what botrytis looks like on grapes. And it is pretty moldy.
Oh, okay. Yeah, for sure. Huh. Ooh.
Yeah. And you can find bottles of Sauterne around here for like a couple $100.
That kind of looks like the kind of mold that I was seeing on the boat.
It does not look pleasant.
Yeah. I can show you a video afterwards of some of the mold.
Yeah.
When I got back.
Yeah, I'm down.
Up in the bow.
I feel so bad about that.
Yeah, it's pretty gross. It's kind of, it has that feeling of you are in some sort of apocalyptic scene because there's this monster blob that's growing,
Like War of the Worlds.
and you try and wipe it out, and then it comes back.
Yeah.
And there's, if you let your imagination go wild, it's like, well, it's going to start to get inside of me.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're a germaphobe and you're washing your hands and you're peeing in bottles and you're out there on the water, and
Yep.
well, we all know how that ends up.
Yeah.
It's no good. Well, man, I got to tell you, I tried. I was thinking of so many different things that we could just sit and chat about, because whenever I'm sitting with you, I always it's always pretty amazing because you're very well read and everything, and very smart, intellectual person. Probably one of the top ones that I have on the show.
Gosh.
No offense, Sven. No, Sven is as well. The conversations with him are fantastic. But it's one of those things where sometimes it's nice just to spit, like have a little junk food conversation.
Totally. And thank you so much. No, I love doing this, and I think that sometimes it's the the general direction that I tend to go. The tendency is to talk about wine and food and restaurants, and we kind of checked that off early, and then we went into other directions because I'm not like an active sommelier on the restaurant floor anymore. The wine that I am interacting with is just as a consumer, just like everybody else, and I work in this role that's kind of restaurant hospitality adjacent, but it's not with the people who are producing the wine or with the people that are drinking the wine. So a lot of the stuff that's still in my brain is pretty atrophied from when I was like a very active wine person.
Yeah.
Or like studying for exams or doing that. And there's a good thing about that is I don't have to stress about knowing everything anymore. No one's gonna. I don't have to take a theory exam.
I'm not gonna get a flood of emails
he's wrong. Yeah,
he's off his game.
They actually pronounce botrytis, Jerome.
Yeah,
you idiot.
Well, I mean, no pun intended, but I also don't want to put you in a bottle.
Yeah,
so to speak. I don't want it just every time you come on, because I'm hoping there'll be many more as well. But it's I don't want it to always just be like, oh, well, Jerome's here, we got to talk about wine.
Yeah, and it's not fun as a listener to like listen to people drink wine. Like it's not, to me, the sound of like pouring wine in a glass and like swirling and like sipping and all those noises are not pleasant to listen to when you're listening in earbuds.
Yeah, right.
And there's no real way to communicate the experience of drinking wine in a podcast. It might be a little more effective in a YouTube video.
Yeah,
but it's what I really the wine focused media are stories and people traveling to these places.
The experiences that open up to you around that bottle of wine.
Yeah,
not what's in it.
I totally think so. And it's not like wine is kind of difficult to get everywhere. Like even at Talk where I worked before the pandemic, we had probably like once a month or once every 2 months this like Talk Wine Club, and it was literally me and a buddy, or me and two friends, two colleagues of mine. We'd use our platform to, like, sell tickets, but it basically Friday at 4:30. Probably we try to do it once every 4 to 8 weeks, depending on everyone's
you can go
busy.
online and watch it.
No, we do it in person.
Oh.
So we like send out a calendar invite, and we'd see like who's actually interested, and we'd get like 20 or 25 or 30 people, and we'd say, okay, it's gonna be $20 a person. And we'd take all their money, and we'd go to a liquor store, and we get 4 bottles of this wine, 4 bottles of this wine, 4 bottles of this wine. I'd bring it in on Friday. I'd make a little PowerPoint thing with like pictures of where it comes from.
Oh, wow.
And we'd pour it around, and we'd literally just talk about it, because Talk is hospitality and restaurant and wine adjacent, such a dumb word, but it's true. We have these people that are working so closely with restaurant owners and chefs and winemakers, and then on the other side, the guests that are actually booking restaurants and booking wine tastings and enjoying this stuff. Wouldn't it make sense if some of our account managers and hospitality team and design and engineers actually got to learn a little bit about wine too, just so we can just participate in that culture,
gets
that
everybody
we're
on
with.
that same page.
Yeah. And it's fun too, because the two people that I'm doing this with, Eric and Corey, are also wine interested. They weren't sommeliers, but they know a lot about wine. They've traveled, they've enjoyed wine in Europe and across California, so they're kind of clued into it. And I take care of some of the more technical stuff, and then they talk about their experiences with it and kind of the general, and it's a really like good balance. But you get a bunch of these people who have never really worked directly with wine before, and you say, okay, here are 4 different types of Riesling. They all taste different. What's your favorite one? Because their chances are that we're going to bring in a wine that you've seen on a wine list at like just buy the glass. You're like, man, that's $16. I'm not going to gamble, and I don't want to be the weird person that asks the bartender for a taste of it. So I'll just get a Chardonnay,
right?
Or I'll just get a beer, or I'll just get a cocktail, because they've never had a Sirtico, or they've never seen Nebbiolo, and know kind of what it's like when you just have like a Pinot Noir there, and they know that they like that. So, and so it was a chance to say, here's what all these taste like. You can find what you like and what you definitely don't. And we got to do this every 6 to 8 weeks during the pandemic, and I moved to New York. We tried to do it virtually, and I think there was some success, but it was like
it's never the same.
It was over Zoom.
Yeah,
and everyone had the same wine. Eric and Corey would still go to Binny's, and they still pick up all the same bottles, and they'd like drop it off at people's houses that signed up for it.
Oh, really?
It was really cool. Yeah, I think the extent that we could do it worked.
Yeah,
but the feedback wasn't really there, where I would literally be like Corey and Eric and I would be kind of in front of these 25 people with a slideshow of like, how cool is Mount Etna? Like, it's an active volcano in Sicily. The grapes are grown at like this elevation, which brings in these characteristics, and how great is that? And then we all get to taste it.
Yeah.
And then we all get to kind of talk about it and chat, not just like, oh yeah, it tastes like lemons. But it's really more like, what would you want to eat with this? What season does this kind of feel like? Where would you want to be drinking this wine?
Right.
Is like on a terrace in Italy, or is it like a cabin, like big Cabernet? Like, is it snowy outside? Is this like warming you during the winter?
God, you have such a passion.
It's so much
for
fun.
It, golly.
But you can't do it over Zoom.
No,
because everyone's muted, or one person pours wine and kind of has some like small side chatter, and it mutes everybody else. So it's just it wasn't really there.
No, it never is. I've done a few presentations and such online, and they're nothing. I mean, even when I'm sitting there talking, going through this whole thing, there's part of my brain that's like, man, if I was on the other end watching this on screen, it is not the same as being there live on a stage and trying to really share your enthusiasm or your fear or the story just with people. And
it's fun at dinner, like last night when we had those 2 bottles side by side, and your mom went back and forth, and that was really cool because I was right there, and I was able to see and talk to her about what she liked and what she didn't like about both, and that was fun. Over Zoom or on a podcast, you can't really do that. Like, everyone else is just kind of watching 2 people drink wine, and that's weird.
It doesn't equate, I don't think.
But the actual podcast, like with stories and with wine producers and talking about why they make wine a certain way that they do, or where their vineyards are, or what the weather's like, and all that stuff is, to me as a listener, much more intriguing. And so that's what I like. I think we might have just discussed it earlier in the week, but I don't think that we should like bring 2 bottles of wine and taste them and then do weird slurping noises.
I think honestly, if we were going to go full bore into a full on wine podcast, like say the next time you're around, it would probably be, I would think that like I would have you bring one of your favorite bottles of wine, like your all time like top 5 or something, just one, and we might drink it, but basically tell the story of that wine and all the things around that bottle and all that, in an hour on a podcast, and have like a conversation about it. I think that would be pretty interesting, where, I don't want to say it's cliche to always sort of wines should be compared to other wines, but it seems like that's sort of the whole tasting thing.
It's helpful to have it kind of binary. Like yesterday with your mom, it was nice to be able to go back and forth, because she's like, wow, this is much more, this is much less, this has this one doesn't. Because when you're just drinking kind of in a vacuum, you're like, I like it, and then you're trying to think back, what did I like about it?
Well, and that's the thing though, is if we be breaking the norm by just basically teaching about one in particular, and then people might go out and they would try it, and some would like it, some wouldn't.
It'd be cool.
They'd know a shitload about it.
Maybe next year, if the timing works out the same way that it did this year, with a little bit of planning, we can go down to the area around Traverse City, like Old Mission Peninsula, and go to a winery and bring in the winemaker, and then we all 3 could do it.
Yeah, well, that is sort of on the horizon
Yeah.
is to figure out a way to be able to have a third mic.
Nice.
That would be pretty cool.
You and I could just share one.
Yeah, right. No, it doesn't work that way. All right, man. Well, I know we've got to wrap this up, but as usual, man, thanks for not only being here in Michigan and in Jeromestown and stuff, but you know what I must say, it was wonderful to see you dead asleep on the couch here, right by the roaring fire out of Jeromestown
for like an hour and a half.
Almost
2 hours.
And Francesca and I just chatting away.
Yeah.
But what that means to me when I see that is that as a person who is 100% comfortable in their surroundings,
Totally.
and that's what I always want everybody to feel when they're up here.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, I mean, just the sleep alone has been so much better.
Yeah. Right.
And it's been a blessing that both of us were able to, in the past we've maybe like worked remotely up here. So for some of the day or all the few days we've had to like be kind of on our computer.
Mm-hmm.
And even though we might be doing some work just out here, we had to go in for phone calls and things like that.
Yeah.
This last week we were able to we didn't bring work computers. We were really able to unplug, and it's an absolute blessing. So thank you so much.
Recharged and ready for the city.
Yep.
After a quick drive down to Traverse City later today.
Which is a lovely drive.
Oh, I look forward to it, man.
Yeah.
I really do.
Awesome.
I might see if Mox is down there and see if I can get him. And for the listeners, that's my cousin Nick. We had a podcast about New Zealand long ago. All right, Jerome. Thank you so much. And until next time.
Thanks, Jerome.
All right.